Good morning, everybody. Mr. Harvey here. Let's get into our Chapter 9 lecture of the Enlightenment. Here we go. So Chapter 9 is all about the Enlightenment, also known as the Age of Reason, the Age of Rationality. The Enlightenment, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be this intellectual movement that really builds off the scientific revolution. The Enlightenment is where we see that rational, logical thinking, that scientific thinking really brought to other facets of society, economically, socially, politically. We see this scientific thinking, influence a variety of other thinkers and really, start this movement of the Enlightenment, of where people are gonna, as Immanuel Kant put it, people are gonna kind of rise, above their self-incurred, immaturity, and we're gonna see people, be thinking for themselves, thinking about brand new ideas like freedom of speech, freedom of religion. They're gonna be thinking, is the death penalty, moral, ethical? Should a king have all the power? Should different branches of government have power? Different power be distributed evenly? So we're going to see this vast array of new ideas in the name of reason, in the name of rationality. Let's talk about what's going on during this time. Okay, so the Enlightenment is going on during the late 1600s, mid 1600s to this through the 1700s. What's going on at the same time? Well, England has its constitutional monarchy. The Glorious Revolution has taken place, and that will actually be one of our really important causes to why the Enlightenment pops off. Absolutism, Henry of Navarre, Louis the 14th, Cardinal Richelieu. We have seen our French monarchs really consolidate power and rule in absolute fashion in France. Revolutions. We will see the Enlightenment spark revolutions at the end of the 1700s. As we know, the American Revolution, French Revolution, which is the gnarliest one. We're going to see revolutions take place in Latin America. The Enlightenment will spark revolutions as people are going to be fighting for some of these freedoms that the Enlightenment thinkers advocate for. Intellectually, science and reason. The thinking of Bacon, Descartes, Kepler, Newton, Galileo, Vesalius, that rational, logical thinking of relying, as Galileo put it in his letter to the Grand Duchess Christina, relying on their sense experiences. We're gonna see that scientific thinking, looking at the world through a rational lens, really influence the Enlightenment, and that's kind of the intellectual thought process that's taking off during this time. Culturally, people are focused on themselves. People are focused on the natural world. People are not focused on God. That this Renaissance ideal of individualism is still alive and well. People are focused on humanity, focused on the rational world, not focused on religion. Socially, I'm going to talk about this. Literacy is going to explode, and I will talk about that with the print culture. Economically, I will mention this, and we're going to talk about this, but mercantilism is going to die off. This old ideology of governments controlling the economy, no. We are going to see capitalism. Adam Smith, laissez-faire economics, started in Great Britain, a Protestant country. Capitalism, where businesses take over, businesses control the economy. That is going to become the popular economic form of the world, and still is today. All right, politically, Britain, Glorious Revolution, Bloodless Revolution, William and Mary, kicking out James II. Britain is now a constitutional monarchy. We talked about the Act of Union. They are now known as Great Britain. Scotland has joined them. Ireland will join later. We are going to see the Act of Settlement. So eventually the Stuarts with Anne are going to go away. We'll see the Hanover line. But we know that during the Stuarts, and because of the Glorious Revolution, and because of the cabinet system, we are going to see that monarchs in Great Britain aren't going to become very, very important. It's more of the prime ministers. And who was our first prime minister? You should all know Sir Robert Walpole, considered the first prime minister. And we're going to be talking about important prime ministers. Gladstone, Disraeli. We'll be talking about Winston Churchill, Chamberlain, many prime ministers that we need to know. France, royal absolutism, right? Henry of Navarre, Richelieu, Louis XIII, Louis XIV, all the way up until we're going to see Louis XVI get his head cut off, okay? And we will see that Bourbon line. Louis XVI is not the last Bourbon, but he will be one of the last important Bourbons that we'll talk about. But France, in this case, is ruled by their absolute monarchs, believing in divine right. And we have our Central Eastern European powers: Prussia, the Hohenzollern family, Frederick the Great, Frederick William, the Great Elector, right? Frederick the First, Frederick William the First. So we see those rulers. You should all be familiar with them. Habsburg Empire. We have Maria Theresa, the Pragmatic Sanction, Charles VI, right? And Russia with the Romanovs, all ruled in an absolute way. And we'll talk more about enlightened absolutism a little bit later. All right, and we have the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East. Okay? Let's get ready to move on. All right, so what was the Age of Enlightenment? Okay? This is all about reason. This is where we are going to see traditional ways of thinking, traditional norms outside of science be challenged. Okay? The status quo be challenged. Good example is going to be politics. People are going to be like, why do we have one person that has all the power? What if they're crazy? What if they're not very intelligent or competent? What if they, are really corrupt? We need to have, how about we have different people have different powers in government so we can have it kind of distributed a little bit more evenly? Or better yet, let's have, the people have a say in government. We're going to see people challenge the status quo in the name of reason. This is where people are going to be taking that rationality, that reason of science, and applying it all over the spectrum, socially, politically, economically. And we're going to see people say, well, if there's natural laws of science, like gravity, like the law of inertia, the Kepler's laws of planetary motion, well, are there other natural laws of society? Are there natural rights that humans have? We're going to see people try to apply that scientific reasoning to other facets of society and challenge the status quo. Beccari is going to challenge the status quo that, well, that's kind of silly to be, guilty until proven innocent. Why aren't you presumed innocent until proven guilty? That's going to be kind of silly to, have a death penalty. Because aren't you just as bad if you kill the murderer? So we're going to see people talk about this, challenge the status quo, and really and challenge it in the name of reason and rationality. And we're going to see thinkers be incredibly critical of society, incredibly critical of politics. Voltaire is going to get himself kicked out of a whole bunch of countries for questioning policies. We're going to see, people are challenging the status quo. Why does society have to be like that? Why can't there be freedom of speech? Why? Voltaire is going to be like, why can't we have freedom of religion? What's the big deal? Okay? We're going to see people challenge the norms of society in the name of reason. Okay? And as I alluded to earlier, this is Immanuel Kant. He notes that he considers this a man's emergence from his self-incurred immaturity. Very interesting. All right? We're going to see during this time the emergence of a secular worldview. Okay, we're going to see people not necessarily become atheists. Okay, don't think that people are in droves and droves going to not believe in God. No, many people are still going to hold their faith in God. However, they're going to view the world rationally before their own religious views set in, if that makes sense. That their first mode of understanding and looking at the world is not going to be God. It's going to be reason. It's going to be rationality. They're going to be looking at the world, through their sense experiences, as Galileo was saying. And people are going to, still believe in God, but they're going to put their reason first and rationality first. Okay, and this is going to be on a huge, large level. Many people are going to, put their faith in reason first as opposed to religion. Okay, so a secular worldview is really going to take hold. Okay, let's talk about some of the causes. First things first, science, this Newtonian worldview. All right, we are going to see science persuade the many other philosophers to start questioning other facets of society. Well, if the church, if we were wrong about how the world works from a scientific view, we might be wrong about how the world works from a social view or a political view. And so the success of Newton, Kepler, Galileo, Vesalius, Harvey, the success of these thinkers is going to really persuade many of our new thinkers, Voltaire, Montesquieu, Beccaria, Rousseau, to be questioning other norms and other traditional viewpoints. And we're going to see, these thinkers continue to avoid superstition, continue to avoid the supernatural, and use reason to find the natural laws of society, of politics, of economics, and apply these natural laws to other facets of the world. So science, huge influence on the Enlightenment, this scientific thinking, where seeing people take that scientific thinking, that rationality, that reason, that experimentation, and use it in other parts of the world. Okay, let's move on. All right, excellent, incredible picture. This is William Blake's Newton. We'll talk about William Blake a little bit later, but this is a picture of the Enlightenment, and this really illustrates what the Enlightenment was all about and science was all about. This picture is showcasing a human naked in his natural state in nature, doing what? Using math, okay? Using his logic, using his reason, using his rationality, because what William Blake is saying is, well, humans in their natural state are rational, logical, reasoned creatures, okay? And that is what defines a human, and that is going to be a defining characteristic of the Enlightenment, is that humans are naturally enlightened and reasoned and rational, and that is what we do. Okay, all right, let's continue talking about some of the causes. Our next cause is going to be England. England, Protestant country. England has, and we've talked about this, the West is always ahead of the East. England is at the forefront, the cutting edge of these political, social, and economic ideals. England is an example of how progressive ideas about how some of these new liberal ideas are going to be working so well. And so we're going to see the rest of Europe go, whoa. France especially, Voltaire, Montesquieu, Rousseau are going to be looking at England saying, whoa, it works. And an example is the English Bill of Rights. England is going to have a very stable government once Parliament separates the power from James II. Once Parliament has a say in government and has a dominant say in government. And we're going to see that political stability really influence, especially Montesquieu, who writes his Spirit of the Laws and saying, wow, separation of powers, a system of checks and balances, that works. And who's that going to influence? America, the American Revolution. And you can see in our government today, we have a president, we have a legislative branch, we have a judicial branch. Our power is separated on purpose. That was because of the Enlightenment, and that was because of the Enlightenment, meaning the Enlightenment thinkers, seeing this success in England. Also, we're going to see England start to use capitalism, laissez-faire economics. People are going to be seeing England make a ton of money and see England, dominate the world commercially. That will influence many thinkers to be talking about the importance of capitalism, the importance of government getting out of the economy. Mercantilism, the government's controlling the economy. Capitalism, this is the exact opposite, where the government gets out of there. All right, England is going to have relative freedoms that's going to make it a much more dynamic place of where new ideas and where people are going to be flocking to. We're going to see England have freedom of speech, freedom of the press, religious toleration, except for Roman Catholics, and we kind of talked about that. But England is going to be a huge influence to so many of these thinkers when it comes to Voltaire, Montesquieu, and you'll see it. But they are drawing a lot of their inspiration from how successful England is. Okay, and this is a contrast. A good contrast is with France, a mercantilist country, lack of religious toleration. They're censoring. There's no freedom of the press. Okay, you can be arrested, without due process. England is going to influence many of these thinkers because as England is challenging the status quo, as England is at the forefront and becoming such a successful country and a pleasant country to live in, we're going to see many countries, around Europe, France, some of the Germanic countries, Central European countries are going to be saying, why can't we be like that? Russia, why can't we be like that? Spain, why can't we be like that? Even though we're not really talking about Spain anymore. So England, huge influence to the Enlightenment. Another one, the print culture. We are going to see literacy just shoot right through the roof. And we are going to see during the 18th century a massive volume of printed material, of books, of journals, magazines, daily newspapers are going to, just be produced on a massive scale. So if there's a larger volume of reading materials, you're going to have a larger volume of literate people because people are going to be able to, more and more people are going to have access to reading materials. That's going to lead to an increase in literacy. And subsequently, if you have an increase in literacy, that's going to lead to an increase in demand for printed material. So these two ideas of literacy and printed material are going to go hand in hand. Initially, we're going to see more printed material, so we're going to see an increase in literacy. But if we see an increase in literacy, we're also going to see subsequently an increase in printed material. And we're going to see reading become a very, very, very valued part of European society. People are going to value reading and value talking about new ideas and value talking about all these radical ideas. Okay, the print culture is going to help circulate new ideas. It's going to help communicate information. People are going to be talking about all these new ideas. People are going to be talking about all of these, new books they're reading. They're going to be sitting at a coffee shop saying, "Man, did you just read this thing about Voltaire? It's crazy. He says that the newspapers, government shouldn't censor a newspaper." And people are going to be like, "Yeah, I read about that. It's amazing." Ideas are going to circulate because of this print culture. More and more people are going to be able to read. More and more people are going to be able to read about these ideas. And we're going to see people interested, in secular things. They're going to be talking about the freedom of the press as opposed to God. They're going to be talking about, the freedom of, speech as opposed to God, freedom of religion as opposed to God. So they're going to be much more interested in secular ideas, okay? Also, because of, because of the great demand, for books, we're going to see a huge supply of books. And so we're going to see, books and texts, they're not going to be very expensive to be produced. And so we're going to see people, a lot of people be able to access these texts and access books. And so subsequently, we're going to see, authors start to just write for a living, and that's going to become an occupation. We're going to see, authors, and that's just what they do. And so this print culture is just going to, vastly change the European landscape for ideas and thinking in their intellectual culture. Okay. We're also going to see during this time public opinion. And this is going to be very, very important. We will talk about that, but people are going to start reading and have an opinion on things. And that will be very important for governments. People are going to, start to have. And we're talking about, as we talk about liberalism, and we're going to be talking about eventually democracy. Liberalism is not democracy, but we're going to see a public opinion. And when rulers ignore the public opinion, that's bad for them. We will allude more to this with the French Revolution and Louis and how he will ignore the vast public opinion of the Third Estate, which is, roughly 95% of France, and how he ignores them and then he ends up dead.
So this is important. And we have a public opinion today, and I always, I like to allude to it like, people have opinions on, our government, on, what's going on in America. A public opinion is very, very important because if politicians aren't receptive to public opinion, if politicians aren't open to public opinion, then they won't be a politician for very long. Okay. And as I said, this is just people's opinions, their viewpoints concerning authors. And we're gonna see a public opinion, people are gonna be talking about ideas. People are gonna be meeting in a coffee house, a tavern, a bar, and talking about these new ideas, talking about the authors, talking about what's going on in the new print culture. Okay. So it's going to be, this public opinion is going to be very important to the Enlightenment. Okay. So we're going to see reason and logic, all right, start to overcome and circumvent, boom, traditions and superstitions. All right. This is going away. This is becoming the new norm. Reason and logic. Okay. And take a look at the increase in literacy in Europe. Look at that. Germany, 1500s, 3 to 4%. Couple hundred years later, after the Enlightenment, 50%. Okay? Males a little bit higher than females. All right? Take a look at rural Normandy. Okay? Non-urban France. Females, right when the scientific revolution is ending and the Enlightenment is starting, 7%. After the Enlightenment, 46%. That's a huge increase. Okay? 37% for males, 73% after the Enlightenment has taken hold. Okay, huge increases in reading for Europeans. All right, here are some of the must-read books of the time. You got Newton, his Principia. You have John Locke, his 2 treatises. Voltaire, we'll talk more about these, and we'll take a look at some of these excerpts. Montesquieu's The Spirit of the Laws. Rousseau, The Social Contract. MLA, this will be an important book for us because this is going to start some of our feminists. They're going to get really upset with this book because it's very sexist. Diderot, the Encyclopedia, some of the must-read books of the time. And so we're going to see these books spread with that print culture, spread all over Europe, and people are going to be reading them and interested in them. All right, let me stop here, and we will talk about the Philosophes, the Philosophes. Okay, the philosophers. They're called the Philosophes. We're going to be talking about the Philosophes in my next video.